Okay. I'm gonna ask you just straight up. You didn't have anything to do with this, did you?
I don't like that type of crap.
You don't like the type of crap where people get gunned down?
The couple was found shot to death on the porch of their Willard home.
Did you know what she did?
No, I didn't.
Don't hold back now.
You're not good at lying.
This is a lot like a football game. We're the Chiefs. You're on a junior high team right now. You need to pick which team you're going to be on. Because if you don't do what's right, it's going to get brutal for you.
North Avenue 52.
That's fired. All units respond.
When I arrived, there was 2 people on the front porch and blood everywhere. Both victims looked as though they had been shot and were obviously deceased. The reporting party told me that they had a daughter, so I wanted to check for more victims inside the house. She was found in the bathroom of the home, uninjured. Alex had several gunshot wounds to the head. Brianna had 2 gunshot wounds. Alex had an empty holster on his right side and a Glock handgun laying between them near his right hand.
There was an idea that he might have expected that there was going to be a problem, that he was going to have to defend himself.
It was fully loaded, so we knew it wasn't a murder weapon. But I noticed a large amount of 9mm shell casings in and around the victims' bodies.
There was a police officer who lived near the crime scene who realized that he had a doorbell camera. When that was reviewed, it did find the gunshots of the attack at 1:21 a.m.
I heard what sounded to be 10 gunshots in a cadence of 5. A small break, and then 5 more gunshots. None of them overlapped. This led me to believe that there was a single shooter. Someone else has surveillance cameras near their driveway. We were able to see a small economy-style vehicle around the same time as the murders. We weren't able to see the license plate or the color of the vehicle because it was at night, but that was a big piece of evidence.
So the reason we're here is the police received a report this morning which concerns Alexander's house. Okay.
Okay.
But they did find Alexander and Brianna deceased. I don't have a lot of details right now. So just take a second to process that. That's a lot of information.
She didn't say anything. She didn't ask about her daughter. She didn't ask any questions about the crime. Sometimes the sound of silence speaks louder than 1,000 words. Do you know anything about any of that?
No,
I was working all night.
And you, just to be clear, what was your shift last night?
My shift was 6 p.m. till 1:30-ish. Usually stay and hang out for a little bit before I leave. When I got home, I was exhausted.
Right.
Didn't take long before I fell asleep.
When was the last time you had any contact with Alex? Phone, text?
Sunday, October 18th was the last time I spoke to him, according to my phone.
And then have you had any contact with Brianna?
I've never even met her.
Okay.
She didn't seem shocked. She didn't seem worried or concerned. It was suspicious.
Alex and Teresa were not on good terms. There were associated claims regarding mistreatment of their daughter that each was making against the other.
Get some light going on. There we go. Good. Okay, have a seat. See your agreement there.
Yep. Let me show you the part. There is that part. Every Sunday at 8 a.m. he's supposed to bring her to me. I texted him and said, I'm here where we normally do the exchange. And he said CPS is ordering him not to give the child over. Yeah. I plan on also having him prosecuted for violating a court order as well. I don't know what he's trying to accomplish with this.
All right, follow me.
Okay.
Teresa Cox had reported a 9mm handgun stolen from her vehicle. This really stuck out to me, as the shell casings at the crime scene were 9mm shell casings.
And then there was a subpoena that was served on Teresa's phone number. Text messages were discovered between her and Mixie that appeared to be planning the homicide. Mixie was talking about needing to get her head in the right space for what's going to happen tomorrow, which was sent on Thursday when the homicide occurred overnight on Friday. Also, it had previous messages between her and Mixie. Mixie is confronting Teresa and saying, "You want me to kill someone?" Teresa seems like the mastermind. I think she realized Mixie was willing to do things for her and was able to manipulate Mixie into pulling the trigger and killing Alex and Brianna.
When I think of Alex, the first word that comes to my mind is funny. His spirit was lighthearted, friendly. He was always ready with a kind word.
In his youthful days, he was a little bit geeky. As he grew bigger, he became physically active and then followed eventually in my footsteps and joined the Army. No matter how big he got, he was still my little boy.
Brianna was like a sister to me. She was pretty feisty. She was just gonna take on the world and no one was gonna tell her no. She worked 3 jobs just to be able to afford the house that she bought. She was so caring. And she loved children. She talked about Alex's daughter as if she were her own.
Alex and Brianna met at a pizza parlor. He said it was instant love. Alex just talked about his future with Bree and having other children. He was so happy.
You probably heard about what happened up in Willard.
I've heard a little bit. That's pretty much it.
So do you work with Teresa? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I was her
okay.
manager.
So what happened Friday night then? Well, you guys were working together?
Yeah, she was there until, what was it, 1:30?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 1:30, and then went home.
What time did you guys close that night?
I didn't get out of there until 4 o'clock.
Did her girlfriend show up that day or that night anytime?
Not that I remember.
Okay. Was there anything different about Teresa that Friday night?
No. She was upset because she couldn't see her kid.
Matt told me that Tree was with him until they all left at 4:10, and their girlfriend got there about like 2.
Interesting. So Matt said to the police that Teresa went home after work, and Matt told you Teresa hung out with him all night, and he took her home.
I don't know why he would have said opposite things, but Tree was there just as late as he was. Her girlfriend didn't get there until a little earlier before they left.
Okay, so you're 100% sure that Matt took Teresa and her girlfriend home?
Yeah.
It was obvious that someone was lying. It did not seem like Ariel was in any way involved in this, but we believed that Matthew Plum could be hiding something.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Not too bad.
Thanks for coming in, bro.
Not a problem.
I'm Shannon Shipley. I was the one that called you on the phone.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming in. Okay. So, I'm gonna ask you just straight up. Matt, you didn't have anything to do with this, did you?
My daughter Katie, I heard her crying in the living room pretty uncontrollably, and I heard her move closer to my bedroom, just screaming, crying. She's like, "Mom, sit down, sit down. It's Alex." And she goes, "He's dead." You could have just knocked me over with a feather. It was the worst day of my life.
You might know that I talked to Ariel
Yeah.
on Saturday. Some of the things that she told me, you told her, versus what you told the other officers didn't quite match. Did she tell you that?
A little
Quite
bit.
the same?
A little bit.
Okay, and so Friday, what happened?
Friday night, Tree said her car was breaking down. She come in and told me that she had to let it sit because the transmission was overheating or getting hot or something. I didn't really
Did you ever
understand.
listen to somebody say their transmission's hot? Ever in your life, somebody said, "My transmission's really hot"?
It kind of.
Okay, no is the
It
answer.
kind
Let's
of
just be
seemed
real.
funny to me that I just let it go and
Okay.
went on with my job. What I'm taking is she just didn't want to drive no more because she wasn't getting very good tips or whatever. She just wanted to work inside.
What happened?
She was doing my dough prep, helping me clean up. Every once in a while she'd make a couple pizzas. And then around 12:30, 1 o'clock, we got one last delivery, and my closing driver took that one.
And Teresa's with you?
Until like 1:15, and then she left.
Each time he would tell even a small lie, he would kind of wave his lie off by giving me the hand signal, "I just lied to you." Whenever he gave me that signal, I knew to keep following that trail.
So there were no visitors that night, correct?
Not that I remember. There was one time her girlfriend came up there, but I didn't see her after that.
That's a visitor.
That was like around 5 o'clock that afternoon.
So between 2 and 4:10 when you checked out, nobody came by?
Okay.
Not that I remember, because like I said, I was busy doing everything.
Sure.
What happened then?
My nephew had my truck,
Mm-hmm.
and I called him to come pick me up when I was able to get off work. My nephew took me home. Apparently, Tree and her girlfriend was at my house. I got there and they were there.
They just showed up at your house in the middle of the night.
They had walked over or something, I don't know.
But she lives 30 minutes away, so how would she show up on foot? That doesn't make sense.
I didn't ask.
Don't hold back anymore, because I can see you
And
are.
that's what I'm not.
I can
I'm just-
see you are. You're not. You may think so, but you're not good at lying.
He really wants to keep lying, and I keep cutting him off. I want him to know I only want to hear the truth. And as I keep pursuing that, it pushes him into a corner to make a decision. Is it time to tell the truth? Am I going to be able to get out of this?
So I took them home so I could go to bed.
You forgot that you took them home?
I was
That's
I
a
was
big
sleepy.
thing to forget.
I was sleepy, tired. I was so tired anyway, I didn't even remember.
And so how was Teresa and her girlfriend acting?
Actually, just like they normally was. I mean, she was upset about her car, but that's it.
Yesterday, you and I had a conversation on your porch. Remember what I told you when we were standing there? What did I tell you?
To be completely honest with you.
You like football?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this is a lot like a football game. And what we're doing, we're the Chiefs. Teresa and Mixie are on a junior high team right now. You need to pick which team you're going to be on, because it's going to get brutal for you. If you don't do what's right.
I'm not choosing their team.
You had conversations with them that you're not telling us.
Not them, no.
That's not true. That's not true.
Regular people, when you tell them that they're lying, will get very upset. Nobody wants to be called a liar. It doesn't bother him one bit because he knows it's true.
If there's something you think you're going to be in trouble for, you need to be the first one to talk about it. Because the first person that talks gets the best deal. Whatever's in your mind right now, you need to tell us.
Mixie showed up at work right around 2 o'clock, just after Tree left. She was a little bit nervous about something. She was distraught. I told her to sit down, and I'll see if I can find Tree.
How do you know she was looking for Teresa?
Because I put 2 and 2 together on that.
What did Mixie tell you?
She was saying something about she did something horrible.
Did you already know? Did you know what she did?
No, I didn't.
You put 2 and 2 together?
I didn't know. I'm hoping she didn't. I don't like that type of crap.
You don't like the type of crap where people get gunned down?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
I think there's a lot more to this conversation than you're letting us know still.
She didn't really tell me anything.
Is it because you already knew what she did, she didn't have to tell you?
You knew it was going to happen?
That was a yes. That was a
Yep,
yes.
it was. Okay, so you already knew.
Okay, you already knew. Got it.
You're worried you're going to be in trouble because you knew it was going to happen. You didn't do anything. You tell this lady exactly what happened and don't hold back now. This is it.
The head goes down, and we know that he's getting ready to give us some significant information, but he's having a hard time saying it.
Can I have a cigarette first?
Yes, absolutely. Not in here. You've got to go outside.
The cigarette break, it's a calculated risk. Could it be a chance for a person to decide that they don't want to do this anymore? Yes, but sometimes leaving the interview room is also a stress reducer.
About 2 weeks ago, before this happened. Okay. Asking me I knew where she could get a throwaway gun.
Talking about Teresa?
Yeah.
Okay.
I told her no, I don't.
Sure.
So about a day later, she tells me that she has a gun. She was upset about everything going on.
Right.
And then she started talking to me about wanting to do it on a certain day. I'm like, well, if you're actually going to do it, do it. But I don't really want involved. If you're going to be at work, hey, there's your alibi.
Right.
I'm same one on shift.
Sure.
So I was going with the alibi.
So why did Mixie come back to the store?
Because that was the plan.
That was the plan?
I guess for her to borrow Tree's car.
Okay.
Go do it, come back to the store, and then pick Tree up, come up, get the car, and go home.
What did they do with the gun?
That I do not know.
Teresa was looking for a way that she could carry out the homicides and avoid any consequences. You can see that in the setting up the alibi with Matt Plum. She manipulates all the pieces. She didn't care who, even among her friends, got hurt carrying out what she wanted to do.
Okay.
So the plan, was that something that you and Teresa discussed?
Teresa discussed with me the plan.
And was Mixie any part of that plan that you heard or you saw? Or was it just you and Teresa?
Just me and Tree.
Okay. So was part of the plan then for Mixie to do the terrible thing? Okay.
So Teresa clocked in at what time?
I think it was 6 when Tree come in and told me her car was messing up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Her car wasn't messing up.
Yeah.
Right. We know that.
She was doing deliveries. And at like a certain point, then she backed off.
And she stopped because
Mixie took her car.
Mixie didn't come back with the car until like 1:30.
Tree went out, got in it. Mixie come in. That's when I was trying to calm her down, keep her out of the way. I asked her what it was, but
and she told you because you knew the plan.
I couldn't understand what she was saying because she was so hysterical and stuff.
But she did calm down.
She calmed down a little bit. She told me that she killed him.
She killed him? Or?
I guess she killed both of them.
And Mixie didn't tell you how they got on the porch?
I didn't ask. I didn't even want to know because it was already too much for me.
Did they ask you?
No. I told them no.
Now that you're, telling the truth and being honest, omission is a form of deceit too. So if you've not told us stuff that we're going to find out, that would be bad.
The GPS is going to show that I went driving around before I went home, just to clear my mind.
Where'd you go?
I went to Rutledge Ridge walkways, and I sat out there for a while.
What'd you do?
I just sat in the truck.
What were you thinking about?
Why I even agreed to it.
There's something more. Go ahead and hit me with it.
Thinking of something. What is it?
I told Teresa if she wanted to get rid of a gun, Rutledge Wilson was a good place to go. That's why I drove down there, to make sure she wasn't down there.
Rutledge Wilson Farm Park is a working farm that is a park in Springfield. It's heavily covered with trees and foliage, a good place to dump a murder weapon.
If you got rid of the gun, tell us now.
I didn't get rid of it.
Okay, well, here's the thing. If Mixie and Teresa say anything like, hey, look, I gave him the gun to get rid of, that's going to be bad. Dude, if you took that gun, I get it. I understand that. Other people will understand that, but what they won't understand is if you went all this way and then didn't come clean 100%. If you got rid of the gun, please don't hold back if you did that.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So, Mixie, did she give you the gun when she came in, or what?
I don't know how it ended up in my truck.
You just saw it in your truck?
Yeah, I found it.
Where was it?
It was sitting underneath my back passenger seat.
Okay. And you know where it's at now?
I'll show you exactly where it's at.
Is it outside?
It's in the water.
It's in the water. Okay. Well, we can go for a ride. You can show us where you pitched it. Would that be okay? You were going to be in some trouble, okay? But, dude, I'm telling you right now, honesty helps you.
What kind of trouble am I looking at?
It depends. You're being helpful now.
We got in the car, and Matt took us to the location where he had thrown both the gun and the magazine. As soon as we were at the location, the Missouri State Highway Patrol dive team was able to locate the gun.
The firearm matched the serial number that Teresa Cox had reported as stolen.
Finding the gun was big. It was a direct tie of the murder weapon back to Teresa Cox. The evidence showed that he aided Teresa with the intent to further the homicide. She was able to manipulate Matt Plum into disposing of the murder weapon. Teresa, frankly, is the mastermind. It doesn't happen without her. We learned there was a friend who had helped him buy hair dye and told the police that they were in fugitive mode. It became apparent that Teresa and Mixie were on the run.
We learned they hitched a ride with a trucker into Joplin and left the state. We were offered aid from the U.S. Marshals. They told me in no uncertain terms, we will get your guy.
We obtained a search warrant for Teresa Cox's residence. We located a portable safe in the closet. We found a Smith & Wesson handgun magazine. The casings had S&B 9x19-20, the same head stamp found at the crime scene. Also, we received information from Teresa Cox's phone.
Her internet search history was showing things like, what's the easiest way to kill people? How do you report a gun stolen? And then you also have things about how to go on the run.
She had searches for Alexander Schutz and Breonna Sproul's residence, which showed 41 photos of their house. It seemed that she had been planning the murders for quite some time.
Teresa had a 2014 red Chevy Spark, which has a very distinctive profile. When I looked at the vehicle in the video, it looked exactly like a Chevy Spark.
Our case was going from a very, very strong circumstantial evidence case to a hard evidence case.
At that point, Mixie's taken into custody, and the marshals reach out to let our office know that they also had Teresa.
Teresa didn't want to speak without her lawyer present, and so an interview with Teresa wasn't ever established. But Mixie was willing to speak with us.
Let me take those off you, okay?
We wanted to establish more evidence against Teresa that Teresa was pressuring Mixie to do this.
A lot has gone down in a little bit of time, and everybody is scared, all right? Everybody's pointing at you, Mixie. You're going to have one opportunity to put your side of the story out there. People that you thought were your friends are not your friends. They're all scared and they're all singing like canaries, all right? They want you to take the whole heat for this, and I know that's not true. Right now, you're the only advocate for yourself.
I'm not supposed to say anything.
You're kind of at a crossroads where you have to make a decision for yourself. Do you want to protect Matt and Tree, or do you want to clarify how this thing came to birth? I already got everybody else's side of it. And I know that if it wasn't for pressure from Tree, this thing would have never happened. Would have never happened. So you tell me what you want to do.
There ain't nothing I can say.
What kind of relationship do you and Teresa have?
She's my best friend.
Any more than that?
A lot more. I mean, I loved her.
Do you still love Teresa?
Yes. That's never gonna change. And I miss Tree. Just want things to be back to normal.
I don't believe that normal's coming back. Tell me about the pressure that you were being placed under by Teresa.
I don't want to go into any of this, y'all. And I'm still confused about a lot of things.
Are you confused about how you got drug into this?
A lot of times, yeah.
How do you think you got drug into this?
I don't know.
It was going to be a battle getting Mixie to roll on Teresa because she was so in love with her. So I'm going to have to change to focus on Matthew's participation.
I don't want to waste your time. I already read the reports. Nothing about this whole thing is pleasant.
What I need is a confirmation that Matt is being truthful in what he's saying, because he's throwing everybody he can under the bus to get himself some kind of sweetheart deal right now.
I don't think anybody's going to be truthful in this situation.
You're probably right. Are you?
I have no reason to lie.
Why is that?
I just don't. I'm not a liar.
Then I guess it comes down to what part did everybody play in this?
I guess that's the part that nobody knows then. I don't want to do this conversation anymore.
Okay, that's all right. But you're screwing yourself.
As long as Tree's okay.
Tree's not going to be okay.
Let her know I love her.
Mixie was done talking that day, but didn't close the door for subsequent interviews.
Someone in here? Thank you, Detective. Yeah, have a seat right over here. Go ahead and close the door. Yep.
Are you cold?
No, I'm just shaky.
Okay.
I've been shaky.
Okay. Can I ask you what pronouns you like to go by?
She, her.
And if there's something you don't want to answer, you don't have to answer it. And you can stop at any time you want.
I guess I'll chit-chat for a little bit.
All right. When did you meet Teresa, Mixie?
Early July. She just saw me sitting by myself one day, and she came up and she sat down and started talking to me, and she admitted to me that people said to kind of steer clear of me because I was weird, and she didn't really want to listen to him. She wanted to give me a chance. So
that's great.
We became pretty good friends from there.
Gotcha. Thank you. So I wanted to show her that I was professional and that she was being respected. I want her to feel at ease. After that, then I can ask direct questions.
I did choir for a little bit. I was never a very good student. Art was really my only good subject.
I think you have a story that people don't understand. I'm reading stuff on Facebook. People are saying negative stuff about you. They're saying really rotten stuff about you. And I don't think they know the whole story, and I don't think it's fair. Mixie, did you shoot Alex and Brianna? I want to know.
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know who did?
No, sir. I don't know anything about any of that.
How did you find out that Alex had been killed?
The news.
What did it make you feel?
I didn't know what to feel. With Alex, I had asked Teresa before if I could get to know him, but I never really got the opportunity to.
Why not?
She said he wasn't trustworthy and was a bad guy, and so I was wanting to eventually sit down and get all whatever their bad blood was worked out, but it just never worked out that way.
And why was there blood between them?
She told me a lot of things. She told me he used to beat on her, and he'd tell everybody it was because he had PTSD.
You ever think to yourself, I wish Alex would just go away?
No, it was not my place to think things like that.
Did Teresa think that?
I don't know. I mean, she didn't like him.
Teresa took every opportunity to sway people, to maneuver their feelings about Alex, to cause him to be a villain in their eyes, and to favor her.
Why do you think someone would harm Alex?
I don't know.
Why would someone harm Brianna?
I have no clue why someone would hurt her.
If you had to name the real true victims in all this, who do you think the real true victims are?
I have no clue. I don't know how to answer that question. I'm sorry.
Mixie, tell me why you couldn't have done this.
Because it's just not me. It's just not a thing that I'm willing to do.
For someone that had no involvement, it's a real quick answer. I didn't do it because I wasn't in Willard, because I had no ill will against Alex, because I had no firearm. But if they did do it, they have to convince you that they weren't part of this. And at this point, Mixie waffles a little bit.
I was out getting drunk with my friends anyway.
Who were you drinking with that night?
I think I'm done with questions. I just want to go back up to myself.
Go ahead and turn around for me.
There was a recording that Brianna took on her cell phone on the night of the murder. You can hear her talking to someone. I recognize the voice to be Mixie's voice.
Hey, I'm sorry to bother you again. I just wanted to ask what time you would be back, just so that I kind of know a rough time when you can be here so I can talk to you guys, because it's important information.
I can call him if you want to do that.
I'd just rather reveal it to you guys in person.
Let me call him and see when he's going to be home.
Mixie was luring Alex back home He was originally supposed to work from 4 p.m. till midnight, but he left an hour early. He told a coworker that his girlfriend Brianna was alone and he was afraid for her, and that's why he had a handgun on him at the crime scene.
The first of 3 suspects charged with killing a Willard couple has pleaded guilty to his role in the double murder. Matthew Plump took a deal from prosecutors and pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit a felony and tampering with evidence.
I just want to begin by saying I'm sorry to the family. And I'm sorry to Alex and Brandon. I knew it was wrong, and on the way there, I was asking myself, what the hell am I doing?
Teresa Cox pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and 2 counts of armed criminal action. Cox addressed the court, but didn't show any remorse.
While she was being sentenced, she was making claims that whatever she did for the daughter.
I love her, and everything I've ever done was to give her the best life I could. Her safety, security, and happiness are my priorities in this life. As for the future, I wish to pursue her dreams and have the utmost success. Lastly, I hope she and I will have a relationship no matter where we are both at, if she so desires. Thank you.
Cox was sentenced, but not before Schute's family said their piece.
I couldn't believe that she was capable of something that much.
Suffice to say, she is the face of evil. My one wish is that she gets everything she deserves and more. Because she is a psychopath.
Teresa Cox was pure evil. She was somehow able to convince her co-workers to carry out murder, but we were able to bring some measure of justice to the family.
We get to keep a little piece of him alive through her.
That was Alex's baby girl, and he loved her so much. All Brianna wanted to do was love her like she was her own. I miss so much about Brianna. I miss everything about her.
Alex's birthday is on Veterans Day, and we gather together on that day and have a toast in Alex's name and talk about a fun memory, and we include the entire family.
I miss his wit. I miss his laughter, his gorgeous blue eyes. He was just a wonderful, thoughtful guy. He just made the world a better place.
The morning breaks without warning, the way tragedies often do, sliding into existence under a pale California sky that gives no sign of what has already happened. In 1993, this street wakes up like any other. Lawns watered at dawn. Newspapers tossed onto driveways. A familiar quiet that suggests safety, routine, trust. And then the call. Short. Urgent. A voice on the line saying there's someone inside the house who isn't moving. By the time the first patrol car turns the corner, the neighborhood has already crossed an invisible line. Nothing here will ever feel the same again. The house sits modestly between 2 others, paint a little faded, porch swept clean the night before. No broken windows. No splinter door frame. It looks lived in, cared for, normal. The officer knocks, announces himself, waits. No answer. Inside, the stillness is wrong. Not peaceful. Not quiet. Wrong in a way that presses against the chest. When the door opens, the smell comes first. Metallic. Sharp. The kind of scent that rewrites a room instantly. A body lies where life stopped suddenly, violently, without the courtesy of explanation. Detectives arrive quickly, their movements precise, practiced. Yellow tape stretches across the driveway like a warning no one asked for. Neighbors gather at a distance, arms folded, voices hushed. Faces register disbelief, then fear. This doesn't happen here. This isn't that kind of place. Or, at least it wasn't supposed to be. Inside the house, the crime scene tells a story that refuses to speak clearly. There are signs of struggle, but not chaos. Furniture shifted slightly. An object knocked over. Blood present, but controlled. Intentional. It feels personal. It feels close. There's no sign of forced entry. That detail lands heavily. Whoever did this didn't break in. They were let inside, or they already belonged there. That single fact narrows the world of suspects dramatically and widens the emotional fallout even more. Trust becomes evidence. Familiarity becomes motive. Detectives exchange looks. They've seen this before. The most dangerous people are often the ones no one suspects. The victim's name moves through the neighborhood like an electric current. A person known, recognized, woven into daily routines. Someone who waved back. Someone who borrowed tools, who chatted over fences, who existed comfortably in the open. Friends and family arrive in shock, their grief raw and immediate. Reporters follow, cameras clicking, microphones raised. By noon, the story is already taking shape in headlines, though no one dares to use the words cold case yet. That comes later, when hope has thinned. Evidence collection begins with relentless focus. Every surface is photographed. Every fingerprint dusted, lifted, logged. There are many overlapping, smeared by panic or movement. Some belong to the victim. Others don't. In 1993, DNA analysis is still emerging from the shadows of science fiction into practical reality. It exists, but it's slow, expensive, limited. Still, investigators collect what they can. Blood samples, skin cells, a few hairs caught on fabric. They are sealed into bags, labeled with careful handwriting, then placed into boxes that will outlive the urgency of this day. Interviews start almost immediately. Detectives move methodically through the victim's life, mapping relationships, routines, recent changes. Coworkers describe nothing unusual. Family members search their memories for missed warning signs. Friends mention small stresses, nothing that feels lethal. Everyone agrees on one thing: the victim didn't live dangerously. No known enemies. No criminal ties. No reason, at least on the surface, for this kind of violence. Then the focus turns outward, to the street itself. Door to door, detectives knock, asking the same questions over and over. Did you hear anything last night? Did you see anyone unfamiliar? Did anything seem off? The answers come back frustratingly uniform. No, no, no. People slept through it. Or they say they did. Curtains were closed. TVs were on. Dogs didn't bark. The night swallowed the crime whole and gave nothing back. Among the neighbors stands a figure who feels reassuring by contrast. A trusted neighbor. The kind who checks mail when someone's away. The kind who offers help without being asked. He speaks calmly to police, concern etched convincingly across his face. He remembers seeing the victim earlier that evening. Nothing strange. Nothing alarming. His timeline fits. His demeanor disarms. He is, in every visible way, exactly what he appears to be, a good neighbor caught in a bad situation. His name goes into the file like everyone else's. Not highlighted. Not underlined. Just recorded. There is no reason at this stage to look closer. Investigators have other leads that seem hotter, more dramatic. A former partner. A distant acquaintance who once argued loudly. A stranger reportedly seen in the area days earlier. These possibilities burn brightly for a moment, consuming time and energy before collapsing under verification. Alibis check out. Tips fall apart. Witnesses recant or realize they misremembered. Days stretch into weeks. The house remains sealed, frozen in time, while the world outside moves forward. The forensic reports come back slowly, cautiously. Fingerprints are partial, inconclusive. DNA samples are degraded, mixed, insufficient for a clear profile. Technology simply can't squeeze a definitive answer from what's been collected. Investigators do what they can, revisiting timelines, re-interviewing witnesses, pressing harder where cracks might form. But the case resists resolution. It sits just out of reach, close enough to frustrate, far enough to evade. Media attention peaks, then fades. New stories replace old ones. The neighborhood exhales cautiously, though the fear never fully leaves. Parents watch more closely. Doors lock earlier. Trust erodes in subtle ways. The victim's family is left suspended in grief, caught between hope and resignation. They wait for phone calls that don't come, updates that never materialize. Each passing month adds weight to the silence. Eventually, the investigation slows. Resources are redirected. Detectives are reassigned. The file grows dusty around the edges. Evidence boxes are moved from active shelves to storage. The case is given a classification that feels like a betrayal, unsolved. Cold case. 2 words that carry the sound of a door closing, not slammed, but gently, firmly, as if apologizing. Years pass. The street changes. New paint. New cars. New families who don't know what happened here, who don't recognize the house as anything more than a place to live. The trusted neighbor grows older, grayer, settles deeper into routine. Life continues as it always does, indifferent to the crimes buried beneath it. Inside a police storage facility, the evidence waits. Boxes stacked in quiet rows, each containing fragments of unfinished truth. The samples collected in 1993 sit preserved, untouched, as technology advances beyond what anyone at the scene could have imagined. DNA databases expand.
Technique Charpen.
What was once noise becomes signal. What was once impossible becomes routine. Decades later, a cold case unit pulls the file from the shelf.
No ceremony. No announcement.
Just a review, part of a broader effort to revisit cases stalled by the limits of their time. Fresh eyes scan old reports. The lead investigator notices patterns that once blended into the background. No forced entry. Limited struggle.
Proximity. Trust.
The neighbor's name appears again, still unremarkable, still unexplored. The evidence is sent to a modern lab. Technicians handle it carefully, aware that they are touching history, touching a moment frozen in grief. DNA is extracted, amplified, refined. Where once there were fragments, now there is clarity. A genetic profile emerges, sharp enough to speak. When the profile is entered into the system, the weight feels heavy. Minutes stretch. Then results begin to return. Not a direct hit. Then a partial. Then something closer. Familial connections light up, faint but undeniable, pointing not to a stranger, not to a drifter, but to someone rooted right where the crime began. The trusted neighbor's life is examined under a new light. Records pulled. Movements reconstructed. The past rearranges itself around this new axis. When the confirmation comes, it is definitive. The DNA doesn't hesitate. It doesn't equivocate. It matches. The arrest, years later, is almost quiet enough to be missed.
No flashing lights. No shouting.
Just handcuffs closing around wrists that once carried groceries across a shared lawn. The truth surfaces at last, not as a dramatic reveal, but as a cold, precise fact. The cold case is solved, and the shock it sends through the community is as powerful as the crime itself. But in this moment, standing at the beginning of the story, what matters is not the end, but the long, dark stretch between. The decades of silence. The trust misplaced. The truth waiting patiently, knowing that time, eventually, always runs out. The first days after the murder blur together in a haze of motion and noise, a relentless churn of procedure that tries, desperately, to impose order on something that refuses to be orderly. Detectives return to the house again and again, walking the same rooms, tracing the same paths, staring at the same stains as if repetition alone might force meaning to surface. The air inside still carries the echo of violence, a heaviness that clings to the walls and settles into the floorboards. Every step feels intrusive, but necessary. This is where answers are supposed to live. They start with the obvious.
Timeline.
Last known contact. The victim's final movements reconstructed minute by minute, hour by hour, like a clock being rebuilt from shattered gears. Phone records are checked, paper bills spread across desks, calendars flipped back to the week of the crime. A dinner plan canceled. A grocery receipt. A neighbor remembered waving from across the street. Each detail is logged, categorized, assigned a value that might later grow or shrink depending on what follows. The autopsy report arrives with clinical precision. Cause of death confirmed. Time window narrowed, but not enough. The injuries suggest control rather than frenzy, strength applied efficiently, purposefully. This wasn't random. This wasn't a burglary gone wrong. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing and exactly when to stop. The medical examiner's words are careful, neutral, but the implications are anything but. This was someone comfortable with proximity, with pressure, with silence. Detectives feel it instinctively. The killer wasn't rushing. There was no panic here, no desperate attempt to escape. That calm seeps into every conclusion, every theory. It narrows the suspect pool while making the truth harder to swallow. Calm suggests familiarity. Calm suggests confidence. Calm suggests someone who believed they would not be caught. The neighborhood interviews intensify. Officers return to homes already visited, asking the same questions with subtle variations, listening not just to the answers, but to the pauses between them. Who came by that evening? Who usually stops to chat? Who has a key? Who knows the routines well enough to predict them? People answer politely, nervously, eager to help, eager to distance themselves from the possibility that danger might be closer than they'd like. The trusted neighbor is questioned again, this time more thoroughly. He sits at his kitchen table, hands folded, voice steady. He repeats his account without deviation. He saw the victim earlier, exchanged a few words, nothing memorable. He went home, watched television, went to bed. He heard nothing. His alibi is mundane, unremarkable, perfectly ordinary. Detectives note the consistency. Consistency is often a good sign. Sometimes it's a rehearsed one. His house is tidy, lived in, filled with the artifacts of a settled life. Family photos. Tools neatly arranged. Nothing jumps out.
No scratches.
No blood. No obvious signs of recent struggle. He offers coffee. He asks questions about the investigation, expressing concern in the language of a man who wants justice, who wants safety restored. He fits seamlessly into the role expected of him. Other leads flicker briefly. A coworker who had recently argued with a victim over money, quickly cleared. An ex-partner who lives hours away, alibi confirmed. A report of a suspicious vehicle parked nearby days earlier turns out to be unrelated. Each possibility burns bright, then extinguishes, leaving the case darker than before. Investigators feel the familiar frustration building, the sense that the answers are present, but deliberately misaligned. The forensic results trickle in, incomplete and unsatisfying. Fingerprints lifted from the scene include the victims, of course, along with several others that can't be conclusively identified.
Smudged.
Partial. Inconclusive. DNA samples are tested with the best methods available at the time, but the technology struggles. The samples are mixed, degraded, insufficient for a clean profile. The lab's language is cautious, apologetic. They can't say more.
Not yet.
Maybe not ever. Detectives face a choice they've made before. Push forward aggressively with limited evidence, risking a wrongful accusation, or slow down and risk the case cooling beyond recovery. They choose caution. They choose patience. They choose to wait for something solid. That choice, measured and professional, will haunt them later. Weeks turn into months. The case file grows thicker, but no clearer. Notes stack up. Photographs fade slightly at the edges. The victim's family grows weary of repeating the same answers, of reliving the same moments. Their grief evolves, hardening into something quieter, but no less heavy. They ask the same question every time they speak to investigators. Is there anything new? The answer is almost always no. Media coverage shifts tone. The initial shock gives way to speculation, then to fatigue. Without an arrest, without a villain to photograph, the story loses momentum. Headlines shrink. Airtime disappears. The public's attention moves on, leaving the family behind in a silence that feels like abandonment. The term cold case begins to surface in whispers, then in print. It lands with a thud. Inside the department, the case is reassigned, then reassigned again. New detectives bring fresh eyes, but they're still bound by the same limitations. They read through transcripts, re-examine evidence, replay interview tapes. They notice small things, inconsistencies that feel interesting but not actionable. A neighbor's timeline off by a few minutes. A witness who remembers a light being on or off. Nothing that can carry the weight of an arrest. The trusted neighbor remains a constant presence in the background. He attends community meetings. He checks in on the victim's family, offering help, condolences, support. His involvement is seen as kindness, as solidarity. No one questions it. Why would they? He's always been here. Always reliable. Always calm. Years pass. The neighborhood changes in subtle ways. New families move in, unaware of the history beneath their feet. Children grow up. Some move away. Others stay. The house where the murder occurred is eventually sold, renovated, transformed. Fresh paint covers old scars. Laughter returns to the rooms, unaware of what they once held. The past recedes, but it never disappears entirely. In the evidence room, the boxes sit undisturbed. Technology advances quietly, steadily. In laboratories, a cold case unit forms with a specific mission: revisit what time and technology once made impossible. They start pulling files, one by one, looking for cases with preserved biological evidence. The 1993 murder makes the list. Not because of a hunch, not because of a tip, just because the evidence still exists, waiting. When the box is opened, the past breathes again. Old reports, old photographs, old assumptions. The new detectives read carefully, without the emotional fatigue that weighed on those who came before. They aren't attached to old theories. They aren't invested in previous conclusions. They ask questions that feel almost naive, and in doing so, they expose gaps that had long gone unnoticed. They notice the lack of forced entry, the controlled nature of the violence, the absence of a clear motive from the victim's wider circle. Slowly, the focus narrows inward, toward proximity, toward routine, toward those who knew the rhythms of the house intimately. Names that once seemed ordinary take on new weight. The trusted neighbor's file is thin. Too thin. He was interviewed, cleared by lack of evidence, and set aside. No alibi corroborated by anyone else. No forensic comparison possible at the time. His DNA was never taken because there was no legal basis to demand it. The omission isn't negligence. It's context. It's the reality of 1993. The cold case detectives decide to test the evidence again. Not because they know what it will say, but because now, finally, it can say something. Samples are sent to a modern lab, where technicians work with tools unimaginable 3 decades earlier. The process is meticulous, reverent. They understand the stakes. This isn't just data. It's a voice that's been silent for years. As the analysis progresses, a profile begins to emerge. Fragmented at first, then clearer. It's not a full match in any criminal database, but it's enough to suggest a path forward. Familial DNA searching, once controversial, now offers a way to trace genetic connections outward, to build a family tree from a single strand of evidence. The results point inward, not outward. They circle back to the neighborhood, to a lineage rooted in the same soil, the same street. The trusted neighbor's family appears in the periphery of the data, not as a direct hit, but as a shadow that keeps returning no matter how the search parameters shift. Investigators feel the familiar tightening in the chest, the moment when possibility begins to crystallize into probability. They move carefully, aware of the implications. Accusing a trusted neighbor decades later isn't just a legal challenge. It's a social detonation. They need certainty. They need confirmation that will withstand scrutiny, skepticism, disbelief. They begin quietly. Records pulled. Movements reconstructed. Old employment logs reviewed. The neighbor's timeline from the night of the murder is revisited, this time with a sharper lens. Small gaps emerge. A window of opportunity that had once seemed insignificant now feels enormous. Surveillance begins, discreet and patient. A discarded item is collected. A DNA sample obtained legally, indirectly. The wait for results feels endless, stretched thin by the weight of what's at stake. When the lab confirms the match, there is no celebration.
No cheers.
Just silence. The kind that follows understanding. The trusted neighbor, the one who offered coffee, who checked mail, who stood beside grieving family members, is linked conclusively to the crime scene. The cold case exhales, finally, after decades of holding its breath. But for now, in this moment of realization, the story is still unfinished. The arrest has not yet happened. The community does not yet know. The truth sits heavy in a file folder, waiting for the next knock on a door that will change everything. The confirmation does not arrive with sirens or raised voices. It comes in a sealed envelope, slid across a metal desk under fluorescent lights, accompanied by a look that needs no explanation. A DNA profile pulled from decades-old evidence, once degraded, once unreadable, now speaks with a clarity that borders on cruel. The numbers align. The markers lock into place. The probability is astronomical. This is not coincidence. This is identity. The room is quiet when the result is read. No one celebrates. No one exhales. Every detective present understands what this means, not just for the case, but for the years that followed it like a shadow. A trusted neighbor. A familiar face. A man who lived within arm's reach of the crime, untouched by suspicion, protected by routine and reputation. The silence stretches, heavy with the weight of missed time. They begin at the beginning again, but this time the story is different. The facts haven't changed, but their meaning has. The lack of forced entry is no longer just a detail, it's an invitation. The controlled violence is no longer an abstraction, it's a signature. The narrow timeline, once frustratingly vague, now feels precise, almost surgical. Old interview tapes are pulled from storage. The audio crackles as it plays, voices from another era filling the room. The trusted neighbor speaks calmly, confidently, offering help, offering context, offering nothing that could be used against him. But now, with new ears, his words sound different. Not false. Not overtly deceptive. Just managed. Each answer is clean, trimmed of excess. There is no rambling.
No uncertainty.
He does not search his memory. He retrieves it. Detectives pause the tape repeatedly, rewinding, listening again. They pay attention to rhythm, to pauses that feel measured rather than natural, to the way he redirects questions subtly, guiding the conversation without appearing to do so. None of it is enough on its own. But together, it forms a pattern that had been invisible without context. They reconstruct his movements on the day of the murder with modern tools. Cell phone records were primitive back then, but landline logs still exist. Credit card statements. Employment records. Small data points that technology now allows them to stitch together with precision. Gaps appear where assumptions once lived. Time unaccounted for. Moments where he could have crossed the street, entered the house, left without anyone noticing. The house itself becomes relevant again. Floor plans are studied. Sightlines mapped. The way sound travels through the walls at night. The way a familiar knock wouldn't raise alarm. The way a trusted presence dissolves fear before it has time to form. The victim's life is revisited, not just the final moments, but the routines. Who she trusted. Who she spoke to casually. Who knew her schedule well enough to anticipate when she would be alone. The neighbor's name surfaces repeatedly, embedded in ordinary memories. Borrowed tools. Casual conversations. Small favors exchanged over years. The kind of familiarity that never triggers warning signs. Detectives speak with people who have aged alongside the case. Former neighbors.
Friends.
Family members. Their recollections are softer now, blurred by time, but certain impressions remain sharp. The neighbor was always around, always willing to help, always attentive in a way that felt reassuring then, unsettling now. Hindsight rearranges memory, turning background noise into signal. The cold case unit works deliberately, aware that time has made everything fragile. Witnesses are older, records incomplete. Any misstep could collapse the case before it reaches daylight. They coordinate closely with prosecutors, ensuring every move is defensible, every inference supported. Surveillance begins quietly. The suspect, now older, lives a life that appears unremarkable. He has routines, errands, conversations with clerks who know him by name. There is nothing in his present behavior that hints at the violence buried in his past. That normalcy is unsettling. It suggests a man who has carried a secret without visible strain. Investigators debate strategy. Do they confront him directly? Do they gather more corroboration first? The DNA is powerful, but they know juries fear the invisible. They want context, motive, opportunity, a narrative that makes the evidence inevitable rather than abstract. They look for cracks, old disputes, financial stress, personal grievances. Nothing dramatic surfaces.
No explosive arguments. No obvious triggers.
The absence of motive becomes its own question. Was this impulsive? Opportunistic? Or was the motive something quieter, more personal, something that never left physical evidence behind? The possibility of confession is discussed, then dismissed. Decades have passed. If he has lived this long without speaking, he will not suddenly unburden himself. Any admission will have to be extracted through pressure, through the slow collapse of plausible denial. A second interview is scheduled under the pretense of routine follow-up. He agrees without hesitation. The same calm demeanor, the same cooperative tone. He sits across from detectives who now see him differently, but he does not seem to notice. Or, if he does, he gives nothing away. They ask about the past gently, framing questions as clarifications rather than challenges. He answers smoothly, repeating versions of the same story he told years ago. But time has shifted the landscape. Some details no longer align with reconstructed timelines. Minor discrepancies appear. He corrects himself quickly, too quickly, as if he knows exactly where the edges are. When the DNA is introduced, the air changes. Not dramatically, not explosively, just enough. His posture stiffens almost imperceptibly. A fraction of a second passes before he responds. He asks technical questions. How reliable is the testing? Could there be contamination? He does not ask why his DNA would be there. He asks how it could be mistaken. The interview ends without arrest. Detectives leave him in the room for a moment longer than necessary, watching through the glass. He sits quietly, hands folded, eyes fixed on a point on the table. There is no visible panic.
No anger.
Just stillness. Outside, the team recalibrates. They have what they need, but they must move carefully. Warrants are drafted. Additional samples requested. The case is being built piece by piece, each layer reinforcing the last. There will be no rush. No spectacle. Justice delayed does not need to be justice sloppy. The victim's family is notified that the case has progressed. They are not told details yet, only that there is new evidence, that the silence may finally break. Their reaction is complex, a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that answers are coming. Fear of reopening wounds that never fully healed. The town remains unaware. Life continues in familiar patterns. The suspect shops for groceries. He greets neighbors. He exists in plain sight, unaware or pretending to be unaware that the past is closing in. Behind the scenes, prosecutors review everything with surgical focus. They anticipate defenses, chain of custody questions, the age of the evidence. They prepare experts who can explain the science in language that cuts through skepticism. They prepare to tell a story that spans decades without losing coherence. The arrest warrant is signed late in the evening, not for drama, but for control. The timing ensures minimal attention, minimal risk. Officers are briefed carefully. This is not a chase. This is not a standoff. This is a quiet ending to a long deception. As night settles over the town, the same streets that once absorbed the shock of an unsolved murder prepare, unknowingly, for its reckoning. The house across from the original crime scene glows softly with lamplight. Inside, the man who lived in the shadow of a secret for 30 years prepares for bed, unaware that this night will not end the way so many others have. The cold case is no longer dormant. It is awake, fully formed, and moving with purpose. And for the first time since 1993, the truth is no longer waiting to be discovered. It is waiting to be spoken. The knock comes just after dawn, precise and restrained, the kind that carries authority without urgency. The house answers with silence at first, then the slow creak of footsteps, a pause, a chain sliding free. When the door opens, the man who has lived comfortably inside other people's trust for decades blinks into the morning light, eyes narrowing as badges surface from jackets. His name is spoken once, clearly, followed by words that fracture routine: arrest warrant, probable cause, DNA evidence. He does not ask to see the paperwork. He does not raise his voice. He simply exhales, a long measured breath, as if something heavy has finally been set down. The cuffs click closed with a sound that is almost apologetic. Neighbors peek through curtains, half awake, registering movement without context. A police car idles, engine low, indifferent to the history it is about to carry. As he is guided down the steps, he glances toward the street, toward the houses that have watched him come and go for years. There is no plea in his eyes, no protest. Only calculation, still intact. At the station, the air smells of disinfectant and old coffee. The booking process is procedural, stripped of drama. Shoes removed. Personal items catalogued. Fingers inked, then scanned. A photograph taken beneath harsh lighting that refuses to flatter or forgive. He looks older here, smaller somehow, the familiar mask dulled by exhaustion. Yet the calm remains, practiced and resilient. The interrogation room is unchanged from decades past, a box of neutral colors designed to erase time. Detectives enter not as adversaries, but as narrators, laying out a story he knows too well. They speak of the night in 1993, of timelines and access, of trust leveraged as a weapon. They speak of DNA with careful precision, explaining the science as if teaching a class, removing ambiguity piece by piece. He listens without interruption. When asked if he understands the charges, he nods once. When invited to speak, he chooses silence. The recorder hums, documenting absence. It is a strategy as old as the law itself, and it is his final shield. News breaks by mid-morning. A local station interrupts regular programming with a banner that feels surreal in its simplicity. California 1993 cold case solved. DNA hit exposes trusted neighbor. The words ripple outward, carried by radios, phones, conversations that stop mid-sentence. The town absorbs the shock in stages. First, disbelief. Then recognition. Then the slow, creeping unease of realizing that the monster wore a familiar face. Reporters descend, hungry for details, for reactions, for footage that can translate complexity into spectacle. Cameras frame the suspect's house, the crime scene from years ago, the quiet street that now feels complicit. Soundbites are extracted from neighbors who struggle to reconcile memory with accusation. He was always so helpful. We never suspected. This changes everything. Their voices overlap, forming a chorus of stunned hindsight. The victim's family receives the call they waited decades for, the one they imagined in fragments but never fully believed would come. Relief collides with grief, a volatile mix that leaves them unsteady. There is validation now, confirmation that their loved one's death was not forgotten, not abandoned. But there is also the realization that no outcome can restore what was taken. Justice arrives late, carrying both answers and fresh pain. Prosecutors move swiftly, filing formal charges, outlining a case built on science and circumstance. They know the defense will challenge everything: the age of the evidence, the integrity of the testing, the reliability of memory. They prepare to meet skepticism with clarity, to turn complexity into certainty. The arraignment is brief, almost anticlimactic. The charges are read aloud in a voice that does not waver. The suspect stands, hands folded, expression unreadable. He enters a plea through his attorney, eyes fixed forward. The judge sets dates, conditions, parameters that will govern the next chapter. Gavel strikes wood. The machinery of justice continues, indifferent to emotion. Outside the courthouse, microphones crowd close. Questions fly, sharp and insistent. Detectives offer measured statements, careful not to compromise the case. They speak of perseverance, of advancements in forensic science, of commitment to victims regardless of time. They do not speak of regret, though it lingers in every pause. As days turn into weeks, the town undergoes a quiet reckoning. Conversations shift. Old memories are revisited, reinterpreted under a harsher light. Moments once dismissed as benign are now scrutinized, their innocence revoked by association. Trust feels thinner, more fragile. Doors lock earlier. Greetings carry an edge of caution. The defense begins its work, constructing an alternative narrative. They question the chain of custody, suggest contamination, argue coincidence. They emphasize the absence of witnesses, the erosion of memory. They frame their client as a victim of technological overreach, a man ensnared by flawed science. It is a familiar playbook, executed with confidence. Experts are lined up in response. Scientists prepared to explain genetic markers and statistical probabilities in plain language. They will speak of rigor, of safeguards, of peer review. They will translate numbers into certainty, showing that this match is not a suggestion but a declaration. Behind the scenes, detectives revisit every decision made decades ago, every lead followed and abandoned. They acknowledge mistakes privately, learning from them even now. There is solace in resolution, but no erasure of responsibility. The case is ended, but its lessons remain. The suspect sits in custody, days measured by routine, nights by memory. Does he replay the crime, the choices that led him here? Or does he compartmentalize, sealing the past behind walls that have held for years? No one can say. His silence offers no insight. As the trial date approaches, anticipation builds. The courtroom will become a theater where truth competes with doubt, where decades-old facts are resurrected and examined under modern scrutiny. The community prepares to watch, to listen, to judge not just a man, but its own assumptions. The cold case that once lingered as an open wound now pulses with activity, its resolution unfolding in public view. Yet even as the legal process advances, an undercurrent of unease persists. Solving the mystery does not undo its impact. It simply redefines it. On quiet evenings, the street where it all began settles into darkness, lights flickering on one by one. The house where the crime occurred stands unchanged, bearing silent witness to history. Across from it, the suspect's former home is empty, windows dark, a void where normalcy once lived. The story has moved forward, propelled by evidence and determination. But its shadow stretches long, reminding everyone that evil does not always announce itself, that sometimes it waits patiently, hidden in plain sight. And as the town grapples with that truth, the cold case transforms from a question into a reckoning, its echo destined to linger long after the verdict is read. The trial opens under a ceiling of fluorescent light that hums like a held breath. Wooden benches absorb the weight of expectation as the room fills, a quiet town gathered to watch its own reflection fracture. Jurors file in, ordinary faces chosen to carry an extraordinary burden, eyes forward, hands folded, instructed to listen and remember. The defendant enters last, flanked by deputies, posture straight, expression neutral, a man practiced in appearing smaller than the story that follows him. The prosecutor rises with a voice tuned to restraint, not spectacle, and begins to stitch the years together. She speaks of 1993 without nostalgia, naming dates and distances, reconstructing a night that refused to stay buried. She talks about proximity and access, about trust granted and abused, about a neighborhood that slept while something irreversible took shape. Her words are clipped, deliberate, each sentence a brick laid carefully into place. Then the evidence takes the stand. A forensic analyst explains DNA like a map drawn with precision, markers aligned, probabilities shrinking until doubt collapses under its own weight. Charts appear, lines converging, numbers translating into certainty. The match is described not as chance, but as convergence, a singular alignment that resists alternative explanations. The analyst's tone never wavers. Science does not need to shout. The defense stands to cross-examine, probing for cracks. They question lab procedures, storage conditions, the age of the sample. They ask about contamination, about human error, about margins that could hide mistakes. The analyst answers calmly, methodically, dismantling speculation with process and protocol. Each answer lands softly but firmly, eroding the defense's scaffolding. A detective from the original investigation testifies next, older now, hair grayer, memory sharpened by time's passage. He describes the scene as it was found, the confusion, the urgency, the early leads that fizzled into nothing. He admits the limits of the era, the absence of tools that might have changed everything. His voice catches when he speaks of promises made to a family, promises that lingered unfulfilled for decades. The courtroom listens, suspended between past and present. The defense seizes the admission, framing it as failure, as negligence that taints the entire case. They suggest tunnel vision, hint at alternative suspects who slipped away unnoticed. The detective does not argue. He acknowledges imperfection, then returns to what matters now, evidence that did not exist then, answers that refused to surface until technology forced them into the light. Witnesses follow, each adding texture to the narrative. A neighbor recalls seeing the defendant that night, details once dismissed as unremarkable now sharpened by context. A friend of the victim speaks of routines, of trust extended without hesitation. Their voices tremble, memories resurfacing with the sting of relevance. The defense challenges recollection, citing the unreliability of memory after so many years. The witnesses concede uncertainty where it exists, refusing embellishment, grounding their testimony in honesty. The defendant remains silent, eyes fixed on a point just beyond the jury. His attorney advises patience, restraint. The strategy is clear. Let doubt breathe, let time itself stand accused. They argue that science cannot reconstruct motive, that proximity does not equal guilt, that a match explains presence but not action. They frame the case as circumstantial, leaning on the absence of eyewitnesses, the erosion of physical context. The prosecutor counters with accumulation. One piece alone may falter, she suggests, but together they form a chain that holds. She walks the jury through timelines that overlap too neatly, through behaviors that align too precisely. She speaks of opportunity and means, of choices made in moments that ripple outward forever. Her voice rises only once, when she reminds them that silence is not innocence, that patience can be predatory. Outside the courtroom, the town watches through screens and headlines. Conversations spill into diners and living rooms, opinions hardening, alliances forming. Some cling to disbelief, to the comfort of familiarity. Others embrace the clarity of resolution, relieved to name the darkness that haunted them. The case divides even as it answers, exposing fault lines beneath the surface. As the days stretch on, fatigue sets in. Jurors shift in their seats, notebooks filling with fragments of testimony. The judge intervenes when tempers flare, reminding counsel of decorum. The rhythm of the trial becomes its own pulse, steady and relentless, drawing everyone deeper into the gravity of decision. The defense calls its own experts, voices polished and confident. They speak of statistical interpretation, of rare coincidences, of the danger of over-reliance on DNA. They warn of miscarriages of justice born from certainty unchecked. The prosecutor dismantles their assertions on cross, highlighting credentials tied to advocacy rather than neutrality, exposing selective emphasis designed to confuse rather than clarify. When it is time for the defendant to decide whether to testify, the courtroom holds its breath. He declines. The choice is framed as strategic, but its weight is unmistakable. Silence becomes a character in the room, heavy and scrutinized, its meaning debated in whispers and glances. Closing arguments arrive like converging storms. The defense appeals to reason and restraint, urging jurors to resist emotional pull, to remember the burden of proof. They paint the case as a cautionary tale, a warning against rewriting history with modern tools. They ask for doubt, any doubt, to be honored. The prosecutor responds with a narrative that refuses abstraction. She returns to the night, to the victim, to the choices that led to violence. She weaves science and story into a single thread, insisting that justice delayed is not justice denied when truth finally emerges. Her final words are measured, resolute, a call to recognize clarity when it stands before them. The jury retreats to deliberate, carrying notebooks and the weight of consequence. Hours pass, then days. The town waits, tension coiling tighter with each update. Outside the courthouse, cameras linger, capturing the stillness that precedes revelation. Inside the jury room, discussions are intense but focused. Evidence is reviewed, timelines debated, doubts aired and addressed. Some jurors wrestle with the years between crime and trial, others with the power of DNA. Gradually, consensus forms, not in a rush but through accumulation, mirroring the case itself. When the jury returns, the room rises. The foreperson's voice is steady, the verdict delivered without flourish.
Guilty.
The word lands with a finality that reverberates, releasing a collective breath held for decades. The defendant absorbs it without visible reaction, face composed, eyes distant. The victim's family weeps quietly, grief and relief colliding in a moment that cannot be scripted. Justice has arrived, but it brings no resurrection, only acknowledgement. The prosecutor closes her folder, expression solemn. The defense nods, already calculating the next move. Sentencing looms, a separate reckoning yet to come. Appeals will follow, arguments refined, uncertainty extended. But the core truth has been spoken aloud, anchored in record and memory. The cold case has shifted state, no longer a question mark, but a chapter etched into legal history. As the courtroom empties, the town begins to recalibrate. The familiar is altered, trust redefined. Conversations will continue, wounds will ache, lessons will linger. The story does not end with a verdict. It settles into the collective consciousness, a reminder that time can obscure but not erase, that patience and persistence can unearth even the most carefully hidden truths. And somewhere in the quiet that follows, the echo of 1993 finally finds its answer, reverberating through the years it waited to be heard. Sentencing day arrives without ceremony, no dramatic sky, no cinematic storm clouds, just a hard California morning that feels indifferent to what is about to happen inside the courthouse. The fluorescent lights are back, buzzing faintly, as if reminding everyone that justice here is procedural, measured, unromantic. The defendant stands again, hands folded, suit pressed, the image of a man who has spent a lifetime blending in, now exposed under a legal microscope. The judge reviews the case with clinical precision, summarizing facts that have already been carved into public memory.
Dates.
Evidence. The DNA match that closed the distance between suspicion and certainty. Each sentence strips away another layer of abstraction, grounding the crime in consequence. The courtroom listens in silence, the weight of finality settling like dust. When the victim's family is invited to speak, the air shifts. A sister steps forward first, voice tight, hands trembling as she clutches prepared notes she barely glances at. She speaks of birthdays missed, of holidays hollowed out by absence, of a mother who died without answers. Her words are not angry. They are weary. Grief carried for decades does not shout. It endures. A brother follows, less composed, anger flickering through his restraint. He addresses the defendant directly, describing the years spent imagining scenarios, replaying that night in endless permutations. He talks about trust, about how betrayal cuts deeper when it wears a familiar face. His voice cracks once, then steadies. The courtroom remains still, absorbing every syllable. The defendant is given the opportunity to speak. He clears his throat, pauses, then delivers a statement carefully shaped by counsel. He denies intent, denies malice, frames the tragedy as misunderstanding, coincidence, fate. There is no apology, No acknowledgement of harm beyond vague expressions of regret for what happened. The words land flat, echoing with absence rather than remorse. The judge listens, expression unreadable, then delivers the sentence. Decades in prison. A number large enough to eclipse whatever future the defendant imagined. The gavel strikes once, sharp and final, sealing the outcome. There is no applause, no visible triumph. Justice here is quiet, heavy, irreversible. Outside, microphones crowd close, reporters calling out questions that dissolve into the air unanswered. The family exits surrounded by supporters, faces drawn, emotions raw. Closure is a word used freely by headlines, but the reality is messier. Answers have arrived, but they bring new weight, new grief shaped by certainty. The defendant is led away, disappearing down a corridor that narrows into the system. His neighbors watch on screens, struggling to reconcile the image of the man they knew with the one now defined by conviction. Some feel shock. Others feel vindication. Many feel both. In the weeks that follow, appeals are filed, as expected. Legal language resurfaces, challenging procedures, questioning interpretations. The defense argues overreach, contamination, statistical misrepresentation. The prosecution responds with documentation, precedent, confidence. The machinery of justice grinds on, indifferent to emotion, fueled by process. Media attention spikes, then wanes. A new story displaces the old. The town returns to routine, but something fundamental has shifted. Conversations linger longer. Doors lock earlier. Trust is rationed more carefully. The past, once distant, now feels uncomfortably close. The cold case unit receives calls from across the state, families hopeful that their own unanswered questions might finally find resolution. The case becomes a reference point, a symbol of what persistence and technology can achieve. It is cited in conferences, dissected in training sessions, held up as proof that time does not guarantee escape. But for investigators closest to it, the victory is tempered. They revisit old files, wondering what else might be waiting, what other names could surface under new scrutiny. Each solved case sharpens the awareness of those still unsolved, a reminder that justice is uneven, incomplete. The lead detective retires months later, quietly, without ceremony. In interviews, he speaks not of triumph, but of responsibility. He talks about promises kept and promises still outstanding. He admits that the weight never fully lifts, that answers come with their own shadows. The victim's home is sold, renovated, its history absorbed into fresh paint and new memories. Life moves forward, as it always does, but traces remain. A neighbor pauses longer than necessary when passing by. A child asks questions adults struggle to answer. Years pass. Appeals are denied. The conviction stands. The case fades into archives, referenced occasionally, rarely revisited. Yet its impact persists in subtle ways. Evidence rooms adopt stricter protocols. Cold case funding increases. Families find renewed hope, fragile but real. The defendant adapts to prison life, another inmate among thousands, his notoriety diminishing with time. He maintains innocence in letters and motions, insisting on alternative narratives. The system listens, reviews, rejects. The verdict holds. For the victim's family, healing is nonlinear. Some days are lighter, buoyed by the knowledge that truth was acknowledged. Other days are heavy, haunted by what can never be restored. They visit a grave, leave flowers, speak aloud the words that waited decades to be said. Anniversaries no longer carry the same sharpness, but they still sting. The date is marked, remembered, honored. Silence fills the spaces where answers once hid, now replaced by memory rather than mystery. The town eventually stops introducing itself with the case, but it never forgets. It becomes part of local lore, a cautionary tale whispered to newcomers, a reminder that familiarity can deceive, that darkness does not always announce itself. In quiet moments, questions linger. Could it have been solved sooner? What signs were missed? How many lives were shaped by the delay? These questions have no clean answers, only lessons etched into collective awareness. The cold case is no longer cold, but its chill remains, a reminder of time's dual power to obscure and reveal. Justice arrived late, but it arrived. Not with fireworks or fanfare, but with documentation, testimony, and resolve. And as the years continue their relentless march, the story settles into history, not as a headline but as a testament to endurance, to the stubborn refusal of truth to stay buried forever, even when it waits decades for the light. Time does not stop once a verdict is read. It stretches forward, slow and unrelenting, carrying consequences that ripple far beyond the courtroom walls. In the months after the sentence, the case refuses to stay silent. It resurfaces in unexpected places, whispered in hallways, revisited in late-night conversations, dragged back into the light by people who cannot let it rest. The cold case unit feels the aftershock first. Their phones ring more often now. Old names resurface. Retired detectives call in with half-forgotten memories, details that once felt irrelevant but now seem urgent. Boxes are pulled from shelves, dust shaken loose, evidence logs rechecked. The solved case has done something dangerous and powerful at the same time. It has reminded everyone that the past is not finished. Inside the department, younger investigators study the file like scripture. They trace the timeline again, not to relive the story, but to understand the failures embedded in it. Why certain leads were dismissed. Why certain witnesses were never pressed harder. Why a neighbor, trusted and visible, was never truly seen. The answers are uncomfortable. They involve assumptions, bias, the quiet laziness of believing that monsters always look the part. Training sessions are held. The case is anonymized, stripped of names, reduced to data points and decision trees. But everyone knows which file it is. Everyone remembers the headlines. California 1993 cold case solved. DNA hit exposes trusted neighbor. The phrase lingers, a warning disguised as a success story. Outside the institution, the community continues to process. Some residents avoid talking about it entirely, as if silence might erase the unease. Others cannot stop. They replay interactions from decades ago, scanning memory for signs they missed. A wave, a smile, a naverli favor. Innocent gestures now tainted by hindsight. A former classmate of the defendant gives an interview, describing him as quiet, dependable, the kind of man teachers praised. The comments ignite backlash online. People accuse her of defending evil. She responds with tears, insisting she is only telling the truth as she knew it. The internet offers no mercy. Nuance dies quickly in comment sections. The victim's family retreats from public view. They have said what they needed to say. Now they try to live with what remains. Therapy sessions begin, then stall, then resume. Healing arrives in fragments, never all at once. Some nights are easier. Others feel like regression, grief crashing back without warning. The mother's old journals are discovered in a box tucked away in a closet. Pages filled with questions, with names circled and crossed out, with desperate hope that never quite died. The family reads them slowly, reverently. They are painful, but they are also proof. Proof that the waiting mattered. That the search was never pointless. Meanwhile, the defendant's appeals move forward in predictable patterns. Motions filed. Hearings scheduled. Delays granted. The language is cold, procedural, stripped of human weight. DNA methodology is questioned. Chain of custody is scrutinized. Experts are cited, then countered. It is not about innocence or guilt anymore. It is about margins. The prosecution responds with quiet confidence. They have rehearsed this stage many times before. They know the arguments. They know the odds. Still, nothing is taken for granted. Each brief is written with precision. Each footnote double-checked. The past has taught them the cost of complacency. Media outlets revisit the story on anniversaries, packaging it as a retrospective. Old footage is reused. Somber music underscores familiar images. Viewers watch, nodding, feeling the comfort of resolution. But the reality is less tidy. Resolution does not erase damage. It only changes its shape. In the town, a memorial bench is installed in a small park. No speeches, no cameras, just a quiet dedication, the victim's name etched into metal, surrounded by trees that have grown taller than anyone remembers. People sit there without knowing why they chose that spot. Something about it feels heavy, grounding. Children who were not yet born when the crime occurred now learn about it in school, framed as local history. Teachers tread carefully, emphasizing resilience, justice, the importance of community vigilance. Students listen with detached curiosity, unaware of how close the story still feels to those who lived it. For the detectives who cracked the case, fame is fleeting. Conference invitations taper off. Commendations are filed away. What remains is the internal reckoning. Some feel pride, others guilt. Most feel a complicated blend of both. They know the truth came too late to save a life, but not too late to matter. One investigator admits, in a rare moment of candor, that solving the case changed how he sees everyone. Friends, neighbors, even family. Trust, once given freely, is now measured. He hates that but cannot undo it. Knowledge, once acquired, does not politely retreat. The evidence room becomes a place of reverence. Technicians handle old items with renewed respect, aware that something overlooked today could define justice tomorrow. Protocols tighten. Budgets shift. Technology advances. The future is built on the bones of the past. The defendant, now deep into his sentence, fades from public consciousness. Prison records replace headlines. His name appears only in legal databases and faded news articles. To some, he remains a villain. To others, a cautionary tale. To most, he becomes background noise, another entry in an overcrowded system. Yet the crime itself refuses to vanish completely. It lingers in subtle ways. In the way people double-check locks. In the way neighbors watch each other just a little longer. In the uneasy knowledge that evil does not always arrive with warning signs. The family marks another anniversary. They gather quietly, sharing stories that predate the crime, reclaiming memories that were once overshadowed by loss. Laughter breaks through, tentative but real. For a moment, the past feels lighter. Then the moment passes, as all moments do. Justice, they have learned, is not a destination. It is a process that continues long after courts adjourn. It lives in memory, in policy changes, in the way a community redefines itself after trauma. It is imperfect, delayed, sometimes cruel, but it exists. As the years continue to unfold, the case settles into a strange duality. It is both closed and alive. Solved, yet still teaching lessons. A cold case no longer frozen, but never truly warm. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between headlines and history, the truth remains what it has always been, unyielding, patient, waiting as long as it needs to be seen. Years pass, but the case never truly recedes into the background. It changes form instead, transforming from a headline into a reference point, from a solved mystery into a quiet benchmark against which everything else is measured. Inside the department, it becomes shorthand, a warning, a reminder spoken without needing explanation. When a young detective hesitates to push a lead, an older one will murmur a single sentence, low and deliberate. Remember, 93. Nothing more is needed. The ripple effects continue outward. Other cold cases are reopened, not because of new evidence but because of renewed belief. Families who had long given up receive cautious phone calls, voices careful not to promise too much. We're taking another look. We're running the evidence again. Technology has changed. Some of those families break down in tears. Others respond with silence, burned too many times by hope. Still, the door has been cracked open, and for some, that is enough to breathe again. The lab becomes the heart of this quiet revolution. Machines hum day and night, extracting meaning from fragments once dismissed as useless. Fibers, skin cells, partial prints. Data that would have meant nothing in 1993 now carries weight, whispers identities through algorithms and probability. The scientists working their speak in careful language, but even they feel it, the sense that time itself is being challenged. Outside the system, true crime culture swells. Podcasts dissect the case with forensic obsession. Online forums debate every decision, every misstep, every overlooked detail. Armchair detectives argue late into the night, convinced they would have seen what professionals missed. Some theories are thoughtful. Others are reckless. The line between analysis and exploitation blurs, and the family chooses not to listen. They have already lived the story once. They will not live it again for entertainment. A documentary crew requests interviews. They want atmosphere, emotion, closure. The detectives decline. The family declines. The story, they insist, does not belong to a camera lens. It belongs to those who carried it for decades. The crew leaves anyway, filming empty streets, old houses, archival footage stitched together to imply intimacy they never earned. The town itself changes. New businesses open. Old ones close. People move in who have no memory of the crime, who learn about it only after settling in, usually from a neighbor lowering their voice mid-conversation. "Oh, didn't you hear? That house. That case." There's always a pause after, a moment where the newcomer recalibrates their sense of safety. At community meetings, discussions about streetlights and zoning sometimes drift into something heavier. Someone will mention the past. Someone else will suggest more patrols, more cameras, more vigilance. The conversation never lasts long, but the undercurrent is always there. The town knows what it lost. It knows what it almost never got back. One of the original detectives passes away quietly, his obituary listing commendations, years of service, a career defined by dedication. The cold case is mentioned only briefly, a single line noting his involvement. Those who know linger on that line, aware of how much weight it carried for him. At his funeral, a colleague places a folded case file in the coffin, symbolic, unofficial, deeply personal. No one speaks of it aloud. The victim's name appears on a scholarship fund established in her memory. It supports students pursuing forensic science, criminal justice, psychology. Fields dedicated to understanding harm, preventing it, responding when it occurs. Each recipient learns her story. Each carries it forward in a different way. Legacy reshaped from loss. In prison, the defendant ages rapidly. Time there is unkind, compressing years into visible decline. Appeals fail one by one. The DNA holds. The courts grow weary of relitigation. His name surfaces occasionally in legal briefs, but rarely in conversation. The world has moved on without him. Yet even behind bars, he feels the shift. Other inmates recognize him now, not as a rumor, but as a confirmed truth. Some keep their distance. Others taunt him with headlines remembered, recited like curses. He spends more time alone, replaying his own past, wondering how a life so carefully constructed collapsed under something microscopic. Back in the lab, a technician pauses over a new sample, reminded of that first breakthrough. The memory sharpens her focus. She double-checks her work. She knows better than most how fragile justice can be, how easily it slips through cracks of procedure and assumption. She refuses to let that happen again. The Cold Case Unit publishes a report outlining lessons learned. It circulates nationally, cited in conferences, training manuals, policy discussions. It is dry on the surface, filled with charts and recommendations, but beneath it runs a current of regret. The acknowledgement of time lost, of lives altered unnecessarily. Families from other states reach out to the victims' relatives, seeking advice. How did you survive the waiting? How did you keep going? The answers are never satisfying. There is no formula. Only endurance. Only refusal to forget. Only love stubborn enough to outlast silence. On the anniversary of the arrest, a candlelight vigil is held. It is smaller than expected. No reporters. No speeches. Just a gathering of people who feel connected to the story, whether by blood, duty, or proximity. The candles flicker in the evening air, fragile points of light against gathering darkness. Someone reads a short passage about memory and truth. Someone else cries quietly. When it ends, People linger, reluctant to break the spell. Then they disperse, carrying the glow with them, back to homes shaped by ordinary routines and extraordinary history. The case file, now officially closed, is archived. It sits among thousands of others, its spine labeled, its contents preserved. It looks unremarkable from the outside. A box. A number. But those who know understand that inside it lives decades of waiting, of missed chances, of eventual reckoning. In classrooms, instructors use the case to illustrate the evolution of forensic science. Students take notes, fascinated by the idea that justice can arrive so late and still matter. Some ask hard questions. What if the evidence had been destroyed? What if the suspect had died first? The answers are honest. Then there would be no closure, only absence. That possibility lingers, a shadow behind every solved case. A reminder that this one was not guaranteed. That it hinged on preservation, on persistence, on chance intersecting with preparation. As night falls over the town, the streets are quiet. Porch lights glow. Dogs bark in the distance. It looks peaceful, almost ordinary. But beneath that calm lies a shared understanding, unspoken but permanent. They have seen what can hide in plain sight. They have seen how long truth can wait. And they know now, with certainty carved by experience, that the past is never truly past. It is only dormant, waiting for the moment when someone is finally willing and able to listen. The silence that follows a solved cold case is different from the silence that comes before it. Before, it is heavy, unresolved, filled with unanswered questions that press in from every direction. After, it becomes reflective, almost echoing, as if the truth itself has left behind a vacuum. People expect relief, celebration, a clean emotional ending. What they get instead is something quieter and more complicated. In the weeks after the conviction, the town learns how to live with certainty. For decades, uncertainty had been the defining condition. Anyone could have been responsible. Anyone could have been hiding something. Now there is a name, a face, a timeline confirmed by science rather than suspicion. And yet, the certainty does not restore what was lost. It simply rearranges the pain. The victim's family feels this most acutely. They had imagined this moment in countless ways. Some versions ended with peace, others with vindication. None of them prepared them for the stillness that arrived instead. There is no sudden release, no dramatic emotional collapse. Just a slow realization that the long fight is over and that nothing is left to distract them from the absence that started it all. They return to ordinary rituals with a new awareness. Holidays are quieter. Birthdays remain incomplete. The chair that was never filled is still empty. Justice did not bring her back. It never claimed it would. But the promise of justice, the pursuit of it, had given them purpose for so long that its conclusion feels like losing something else all over again. The investigators experience a similar disorientation. Some of them had joined the department after the murder, inherited the case as a file number, a name on a list. Others had been there from the beginning, watched their own reflections age in the glass of interrogation rooms. For them, the solve is both triumph and reckoning. It confirms that persistence matters. It also confirms that time is unforgiving. One detective retires quietly, earlier than planned. He tells colleagues he's ready for rest, but privately, he knows the case was the last thing anchoring him. It was the thread connecting his younger self to the present. Without it, the weight of years feels heavier, more pronounced. He leaves his badge behind, walks out into a life no longer defined by unanswered questions. The department holds a closed-door debrief, a ritual more symbolic than procedural. They revisit decisions made decades ago, moments when the investigation veered one way instead of another. No blame is assigned, only acknowledgement. The technology wasn't there. The protocols were different. The world itself was slower, less precise. Still, the discussion lingers on the cost of those limitations. Across the country, similar conversations are happening. The case becomes a citation, a reference point in law enforcement journals and conferences. Slides flash images of old evidence bags, Faded labels, outdated forms. Speakers emphasize preservation, humility, patience. They remind audiences that certainty is not always immediate, that today's dead ends may become tomorrow's breakthroughs. In classrooms, students debate the ethics of delayed justice. Is it justice if it arrives after a lifetime has passed? If the perpetrator has already lived most of his life free? The answers are never unanimous. Some argue that accountability, no matter how late, reasserts moral order. Others say it offers only symbolic closure. The case sits at the center of those debates, resisting simple conclusions. Media attention resurfaces periodically, tied to anniversaries, to new technological advancements, to unrelated cases solved using similar methods. Each time, the headline reminds the public of what happened in 1993, how close the truth was, how long it waited. The story becomes both inspiration and cautionary tale, a testament to progress and a warning about complacency. Online, the noise never fully dies down. Some commenters insist there must have been accomplices. Others question the fairness of prosecuting someone so late in life. Conspiracy theories bloom in the cracks left by incomplete information. The family avoids these spaces entirely. They have learned that public opinion is a tide that cannot be controlled, only endured. The house where it happened changes owners again. Renovations erase physical traces, but not memory. The new residents are told the story during closing, a legal obligation, delivered in neutral language. They nod, sign paperwork, move in. At first, the knowledge sits lightly, an abstract fact. Over time, it becomes heavier. They notice the way neighbors glance at the property, the questions that linger just behind polite conversation. One night, a light flickers unexpectedly. The power stabilizes almost immediately, but the moment lingers, charged with imagination. They remind themselves that walls do not remember, that floors do not whisper. And yet, the human mind insists on filling silence with narrative. They sleep with the lamp on for a while. The cemetery becomes a place of renewed visitation. Flowers appear more often now, notes tucked into vases, small tokens left behind. Some are from people who never knew her, drawn by the story, by the weight of years. Others are from those who remember her laugh, her habits, her unfinished plans. The headstone, once weathered by neglect and time, is cleaned and restored. Her name stands out clearly now, carved into permanence. In prison, the defendant receives fewer visitors. The novelty of his notoriety fades. Appeals are exhausted. His days settle into routine, marked by counts and meals and silence. He writes letters that go unanswered, drafts explanations no one has asked for. The certainty that once surrounded his freedom now surrounds his guilt, closing in from all sides. At night, he dreams of ordinary things. Roads, kitchens, conversations that trail off. In these dreams, he is neither accused nor condemned. He simply exists, suspended in moments that end before consequence. Waking up is always the same. Concrete walls, steel doors, a truth he can no longer outrun. The cold case unit continues its work. New files replace old ones. New names, new faces, new families waiting for answers. But the shadow of the 1993 case remains. It has altered their approach, sharpened their instincts. They trust evidence more than assumptions now. They question certainty. They document everything. A young analyst pauses one afternoon, staring at a spreadsheet filled with partial matches and probabilities. She thinks about how close this case came to disappearing entirely. How a single piece of evidence, properly preserved, changed everything. The thought steadies her hand. She runs the analysis again just to be sure. Outside the justice system, life goes on with indifferent momentum. New crimes occur. New headlines replace old ones. Attention shifts, as it always does. But for those connected to the case, the solve has permanently altered their internal geography. The world is divided now into before and after, into years of not knowing and a future shaped by knowledge. At a small gathering, Someone raises a glass and proposes a quiet toast. To her memory, to truth, to time, reluctantly surrendered. The words are simple, unadorned. They carry the weight of decades. The room falls silent afterward, not uncomfortable, just full. Full of what was endured. Full of what remains. No one rushes to fill it with conversation. The solved cold case does not end the story. It reframes it. It shifts the focus from mystery to meaning, from pursuit to reflection. It asks questions that have no procedural answers. What does closure really look like? How much time is too much time? Can truth heal, or does it simply illuminate old wounds? There are no official responses, only personal ones, carried quietly by those who lived inside the question for so long. As the years continue to move forward, the case becomes history. Not forgotten, but settled into context. A reminder etched into institutional memory and private grief alike. Proof that the past can be reached, even when it seems buried beyond retrieval. And somewhere between the certainty of science and the uncertainty of human emotion, the story finds its final shape, not as a triumphant ending, but as a testament to endurance, to the idea that even after decades of silence, the truth can still speak, and when it does, it changes everything it touches. Time does not stop moving once a cold case is solved. It accelerates in strange ways, rushing past some people while dragging its weight across others. The calendar flips. Seasons stack on top of each other. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the solved case begins to transform from lived reality into something closer to legend. In the town, people start telling the story differently. In the beginning, they spoke in hushed tones, careful with details, afraid of saying something wrong. Now the details come out sharper, more confident, even embellished. Everyone remembers where they were when the news broke, even if they don't. Memory adapts to certainty. It reshapes itself around known outcomes. At the diner on Main Street, the case becomes a reference point, a marker in time. Before the arrest, after the DNA match, before the silence ended, after the truth came out. Older residents speak with authority, younger ones listen with curiosity that borders on disbelief. To them, 1993 feels impossibly distant, like another country. A waitress wipes down a table and says she always suspected something wasn't right. She can't quite explain why. A farmer claims he remembers seeing the suspect's car near the victim's street years ago, though no record of this ever existed. The mind fills gaps eagerly once the ending is known. Certainty breeds confidence, even when it rewrites the past. The victim's siblings notice this shift and retreat further inward. The story no longer feels like it belongs to them. It has been absorbed by the town, by the media, by strangers who speak her name without knowing her voice. They guard their memories fiercely now, protecting the private version of her that never made headlines. They remember small things no investigation ever recorded. The way she hummed while cooking. How she folded letters before placing them in envelopes. The habit of pausing at doorways, as if reluctant to leave rooms behind. These details feel more important than timelines or forensic reports. They are proof that she existed beyond the crime. One sibling begins writing, not for publication, but for survival. Pages fill with recollections, fragmented at first, then more fluid. There is no structure, no intention of sharing. Just an attempt to reclaim narrative control from a world that reduced her life to evidence exhibits and court transcripts. Meanwhile, the legal system continues its quiet machinery. Appeals are filed, denied, documented. Paperwork moves through offices with mechanical efficiency. The case is technically over, but the process insists on finality through repetition. Each denial reinforces the conclusion, sealing it tighter with every stamp and signature. For the prosecutor, the case remains personal. It was the one she talked about at interviews, the example she gave when asked why she believed in delayed justice. Now, she speaks about it less. The solve has answered the question that once fueled her conviction, leaving behind a more complicated truth. Justice, she has learned, is rarely neat. It arrives scarred by time. At conferences, she listens to others speak with optimism about cold case units and advancing technology. She agrees with them, but she also knows the cost. Every success story carries decades of waiting, of families aging, of suspects living free lives in the meantime. Progress is real. So is its delay. Law enforcement agencies across the state quietly audit their evidence rooms. Boxes are reopened. Logs are checked. Forgotten samples are rediscovered. The solved case has made neglect unacceptable. Supervisors issue new guidelines. Preservation becomes doctrine, not suggestion. In one county, an evidence technician holds up a sealed envelope dated 1987 and feels a chill. Inside could be nothing. Or everything. The lesson of the past looms heavily over her hands as she labels, photographs, and re-enters it into the system. She knows now that time does not erase relevance. It only postpones it. The media cycle has mostly moved on, but occasionally the case resurfaces in long-form pieces, podcasts, anniversary retrospectives. Each retelling sharpens some edges and softens others. Music swells. Narrators lower their voices. The story becomes cinematic, dramatic, almost elegant. Those closest to it rarely listen. They know how much gets lost in translation. In one such podcast, a host asks a familiar question: how many cold cases are still waiting? The number is staggering. Tens of thousands. Each with its own frozen moment, its own unanswered knock at the door. The solved case becomes a symbol, a beacon of hope held up against an overwhelming backdrop of silence. But symbols simplify. Real cases do not. The defense attorney who represented the convicted man struggles with lingering doubt, not about guilt that has been settled, but about time, about whether a fair defense is truly possible after decades have passed.
Vittnesesti.
Memories degrade. Context evaporates. She raises these concerns in legal journals, sparking debate among peers. Some agree. Others argue that evidence does not age the way people do. DNA remains indifferent to memory. Fingerprints do not forget. The debate remains unresolved, echoing the larger question of how justice and time should coexist. In prison, the man at the center of it all grows quieter. He no longer protests loudly. His appeals have failed. His story has ended, at least in the public sense. What remains is interior, inaccessible, regret, denial, resignation. No one knows which dominates. Guards see only routine. Sometimes he asks for old newspapers from the early 1990s. He reads about events that once surrounded him, now distant, irrelevant. The world he moved through freely has become an archive. He exists outside of it now, preserved only as a cautionary tale. Back in the town, a new generation grows up with the story already resolved. Teenagers learn about it in a local history unit, presented as an example of forensic advancement. There is no mystery for them, no suspense. Just facts, dates, outcomes. One student raises a hand and asks how someone could live next to a murderer without knowing. The teacher pauses before answering. She says that most people are ordinary until they're not. That evil does not announce itself. That hindsight sharpens vision unfairly. The student nods, unsettled. On the street where it happened, trees have grown taller, their branches obscuring sight lines that once mattered. Houses have been repainted. Families have come and gone. The geography of the crime scene has softened, reshaped by time and neglect. And yet, there are moments, quiet, fleeting, when the past presses close. A certain angle of light, a sudden stillness, a sense of interruption. These moments do not belong to any one person. They are collective, shared by a community that lived too long with unanswered questions. The solved cold case has given them something back, but it has also taken something away. The mystery that once bound them together has dissolved. In its place is truth, heavier and less flexible. It demands acknowledgement rather than speculation. For some, that is a relief. For others, it is a burden. The case now exists in layers. The official version, locked in court records. The public version, shaped by media and memory. And the private version, carried silently by those who loved her, those who searched for answers, those who waited. These versions do not always align. They coexist uneasily, overlapping but never fully merging. As another year passes, the anniversary comes and goes with little fanfare. No press conference. No news statements. Just a quiet acknowledgement among those who remember. A pause. A breath. The cold case, once frozen in uncertainty, now rests in a different kind of stillness. Not forgotten. Not resolved in the way stories promise, but settled like sediment at the bottom of deep water. It no longer asks to be solved. It asks to be understood. And understanding, unlike justice, has no finish line.